Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this time I am playing in the T-71. This is the original Tier 7 American light tank that came into the game a couple of years ago. But you might remember that there is a new kid on the block, right? The M41 Walker Bulldog. When that tank was released, frankly this vehicle was pushed into obscurity. Why? The M41 Walker Bulldog, at the time, on its first introduction, had much better DPM, both with regards to its autoloader and also with the single shotgun, as well as being faster and also having an extra degree of gun depression, as well as having the fact that it was the new kid. And everyone wanted to rush out to play the M41 Walker Bulldog, myself included. And so the T-71 probably cried itself to sleep at night, and a lot of dedicated T-71 players probably moved on into the M41 Walker Bulldog. Then comes patch 9.6, and Wargaming figured out, oh gosh, what have we done with this Walker Bulldog? We have put it into the game overtuned, and they nerfed both the single shotgun on the tank very heavily, but they also nerfed the overall reload on the autoloader to putting it at over 35 seconds to load a single clip. But then again, that tank is ludicrous getting that 10-round magazine. Now they both have the same alpha damage on the gun, they both have the same penetration, both firing APCR rounds that have 175mm of penetration. But the M41 Walker Bulldog, the main difference between that and the T-71 is that if you choose to use the autoloader, you get 10 shots rather than the T-71 that gets 6. But in patch 9.6 also, not only did the M41 Walker Bulldog get nerfed, but the T-71 got some love. It was made more accurate when firing on the move by 25%, and also they buffed the aim time from 2.3 seconds to a lovely 2.1 second, so you don't have to aim nearly as much to be able to get shots out. And so that was a bit of a comeback for the T-71. It kind of, at least it had a niche compared to the M41 Walker Bulldog, and that is this 6-round autoloader just being faster to reload. How often do you play the M41 Walker Bulldog and you figure out, I don't really need all of these 10 shells, and you're reloading after maybe like 4 or 5? Well, the T-71, because it doesn't have to reload those 10 shells and it only needs to reload 6, it can reload faster and get back into the combat quicker. Now this replay isn't only about the T-71 and the M41 Walker Bulldog. I also want to just highlight a few things, and that is your light tank gameplay. See me here sneaking in the bush. Thankfully, I'm held my nerve against that T-30. That T-30 can one-shot me. If he's using the 155mm gun, he will decimate my tank, if not completely eradicate it from the battlefield. And you've got to try and find positions in your light tanks where you can still have an impact even when you are the bottom tank in the matchup. Well, not quite the bottom because there's an AMX-12T on my team as well, but at least near the bottom. From this position, I am providing some excellent view range for my team. But also, you've got to know when it's time to start kicking some butt. And when I saw that the T-30 was behind those 2 bushes, I could successfully and safely unload upon him, quickly dealing nearly 400 damage, that Tier 9 American tank destroyer. So one thing I want to highlight in this video is that in light tanks, you can burn brightly. You can just go crazy, and you've got so much speed and also quite a lot of firepower. Well, at least you think you've got a lot of firepower. You can get yourself into horrendous situations very early on where it's hard to control the engagement. And there's nothing worse in a T-71 than being in a position where you're about to be overrun such as this. And you have to know when it's time to get out. Now, I took a shot here. I could have taken 2 shots, but if I'd stayed in that position, all that would have happened is I would have been slowly grinded out by the IS-3 and also the T-43 that you see advancing. By falling back, I can change the range of engagement, and I can make use of my fantastic camera rating, my good view range, and hopefully be able to shoot my opponents without them seeing me. Just like this. That IS has some terrible view range. And my camera rating means that he cannot see me at 345 meters. From here, we can also engage the side of this ST1, even though he has got some fantastic side armor, which means that we only managed to penetrate 1 out of our shots. So by falling back here, we've also managed to get ourselves into a position where we can now support this IS-3. In a close quarters brawl, we would have already died to the T-43 by now, let alone to that IS-3. However, by falling back, now we can engage and support, and that's what you need to do in your light tanks. What you see me doing here is actually aiming for the fuel tanks of the T-43. Oh, yes. Lovely result there. Now he's on fire, and he doesn't seem to be using a fire extinguisher. We managed to take out the entirety of that Tier 7 medium tank, his 1,100 hit points, in a single 6-round magazine. Don't need to be playing a Walker Bulldog to be able to do that if you aim carefully. And because we've got such a better reload than the Walker Bulldog, we can be back in it to fight again. Now take a look at this. I only have a chance to really squeeze out 3 shots. Now the IS-3 is going to fire at me unless I stop. So what I'm trying to say is that even though having that 10-round magazine on the Walker Bulldog can seem better on paper, quite often you just don't get an opportunity to use it. And if I'd been playing in the Walker Bulldog there, I'd have probably finished off the T-43 and then maybe put 1 or 2 shots into the IS-3 and then not being able to reload in time to engage him. And I'd still be reloading here and not ready to engage that Rheinmetall Borsig Waffenträger. And that's one of the reasons why, if you remember, that I used to play the M41 Walker Bulldog with a single shotgun, because I like to be involved in the combat consistently rather than in bursts. But you don't really have that option anymore with the nerf to the gun, the single shotgun, and so I feel like I'm enjoying the T-71 a lot more recently with the kind of bursty combat that you can have with it. We've already picked up 3,000 damage so far in this game, and we're about to add to that because we have the back of that IS-3 that we just outthought, outplayed, and also outshot there as we take him down. Great result for us, and we managed to turn this game around. At one point it was looking rather ugly. Now one of the main points that I want to get onto next is what I just started getting onto before all the action appeared very wildly. And that's that you can burn brightly in your light tanks, and just because you've got the speed in them doesn't mean that you should use the speed to get yourself into the combat immediately. You have to pace yourself in your light tanks. What you need to do is wait until the combat calms down a little bit. And when the combat calms down and there are less tanks on the battlefield, that gives you far more opportunities to make the plays in your light tanks that will enable you to have big games and also to carry in underdogs. Everybody knows about that kind of player, the Suicide Scout, the light tank that just blindly rushes into the opponents, maybe because he's in a bad matchup, or maybe he just wants to get his double done as painlessly as possible, give his team a little bit of spotting, and then get on and play something else. And frankly, it's one of the least effective ways to play your light tanks in the game. Fair enough, you want to get the initial spot. Just like I did over here, rushing into the bush to be able to spot that Centurion 7-1, and when safe to do so, I engaged him from afar. But there's a fine line between getting effective scouting at the start of the game and rushing blindly into an overly aggressive position where you're likely to get yourself killed, and when you're killed, you've got no more impact in the game. By playing carefully here, finding a sneaky location, and holding my nerve when it looked like I was under pressure, we provided some great view range for our team, and then unleashed hell when it mattered. And that's what you have to do with your light tanks. When you see an opportunity that you think is as safe as possible, do take it. My next key tip is you have to know when it's time to fall back. If we'd stayed down here, fair enough, we wouldn't have taken the shot as we were retreating. But it would have been a losing play because that T-43 and the IS-3 would have very likely come up over the ridge and just simply taken us out. By retreating while we did take that shot, a rather large shot that cost us nearly half of our hit points as we were falling back, it enabled us to get into a position that we could in turn hold from and then support our team and use the quite awesome firepower that light tanks often have. The main disadvantage for a light tank, maybe compared to a medium tank, is that you have less penetration and less alpha damage. But having less penetration and less alpha damage doesn't mean diddly squat if you can control the engagement, wait until tanks are stuck in combat with your friends, and help support them. That will enable you to have big impacts in the game, even when you're not even close to being top tier. And these key tips really are the difference between you coming through the game with a huge experience result like light tanks are capable of, and having to play another round or possibly more of suicide scouting. Let's just take a very quick look at the post-game stats. And so a huge result here for the T-71. While we didn't get a plethora of hero medals, we do get a rather meaty amount of base experience points, 1,519 to be exact, for our 3,434 damage. Because of the fact that the battle lines were so close, it was hard for us to get much detecting damage this game. We only did 870. But I do feel that South Coast is one of the most tricky maps to get spotting damage on, but due to its nooks, crannies, ridge lines, and bushes, one of the easiest maps for light tanks to do damage on. And luckily for us, we didn't have to fire any of those filthy expensive heat rounds that the T-71 gets, and we make a cool 44,000 credits profit. There's no doubt that light tanks are amongst the most tricky to play in World of Tanks, but that also means that they're a very rewarding experience. There's nothing more satisfying than being the underdog. Well, I guess, unless the underdog does come out on top. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, or maybe it was just useful to you. If so, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see what all the fuss is about with regards to the M41 Walker Bulldog, then simply click up here or check out the top right-hand corner of your screen for the more info and the cards section, where I'll be putting up a host of Tier 7 American light tank videos. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the T-71, especially if you're a driver of both the T-71 and the M41 Walker Bulldog. And how do you think the autoloaders on the M41 Walker Bulldog and the T-71 compare? And as always guys, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.